Yo, 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 what is good, my fellow wrestling fans across the world? Welcome to a brand new week, and welcome to an Elimination Chamber prediction and wrestling review rewind edition of what we like to call the Clash of Champions, where we dive headfirst into all the controversies, storylines, personalities, and everything in between that center around this world we know and love as professional wrestling, for better or worse. I am your host, the vegan you believe in, Konscious Kurt, aka Kurt GPT, the moral conscience of America in the flesh as always. And once again, conspicuous by his absence is my podcast partner, Jonathan Randall. And I did speak to him last week, and he is in good spirits for the most part, considering his current situation. But he is not ready to come back to the show just yet. It is still going to be a while, possibly closer to WrestleMania time he'll be back. So until then, I will still be taking over the podcast duties while he deals with the death of his mother and other personal issues. And John, like I said last time I did this show, if you ever need to talk, if you ever need a vent, I'm just a phone call away. But in any event, let's dive into this crazy ass world of professional wrestling, as we do have Elimination Chamber coming up this Saturday from Chicago, Illinois. And this past Monday on Raw, we had the go home show for Elimination Chamber. And I have to say, it did not feel like a damn go home show at all, from the whole vibe, the energy from the audience, or lack of energy from the audience, I should say. This did not feel like a damn go-home show for one of the big PLEs heading into WrestleMania season that I've seen. Yeah, this show was, for lack of a better term, it was dog shit. Yeah, I have to say. Especially considering that I attended Raw a month and a half ago at the beginning of the year, and that show also wasn't great. The whole temperature and the vibe of the show, and Raw just in general last Monday, was dog shit. And they can't blame it on what town they were in, because they were in Atlanta on Monday. They can't blame it on Atlanta. They can't blame it on the crowd there, because this has been a trend that has been going on for weeks, if not months. And it's not an issue with Atlanta. It's not an issue with Memphis, Tennessee. It's not going to be an issue this Saturday with the crowd in Chicago. You cannot blame the cities. You have to blame the company for the uninspiring and uninteresting product that they've been subjecting us to. And I'll break down a little bit of why Raw was dog shit this past Monday, as we did have a triple threat match to decide who would get the final spot in the men's Elimination Chamber, pitting Jey Uso, one half of the World Tag Team Champions, Big Bronson Reed, and OG El Grande Americano. And this match was going along, and at one point in the match, Bronson Reed attempted to interrupt the pin from Jey Uso, and in the process of doing that, he injured his bicep. And he was basically not in the match for the rest of it, and that led to Jey Uso ultimately picking up the win over OG Americano to earn the final spot in the chamber. So Jey Uso will be going to Elimination Chamber, but the bigger story at hand is Bronson Reed's injury, as it's been reported since then that he suffered a bicep tear and is going to need surgery and be out for 4 to 6 months. This is a damn shame. And I hate to say it, but this basically solidifies the fact that that whole Vision stable is cursed. First, Seth Rollins pretends to be injured over the summer just to pull off that ruse at SummerSlam, and then 3 months later, he gets injured for real, and he's been out ever since. And then just a few weeks ago, Braun Breaker gets a hernia from lifting up the announce table, and now he's out of action. We don't know when he's going to be back either. And now Bronson Reed gets hurt. I just remember how hot that stable was when it first started, coming out of the night after WrestleMania last year. And you fast forward to almost 1 year later, and all three of the main members of it are all out. That's unheard of. I don't think I've ever heard of that happening in any stable in wrestling ever, where three of the main members all get put out of action within a few month period. Yeah, it's strange. It sucks. It's unfortunate. I really feel for Bronson Reed, because he also missed WrestleMania last year due to injury. And now this year, when he's this close to WrestleMania, he's going to get injured again. Yeah, it sucks. My heart breaks for the dude. And yeah, it's an unfortunate reality of the wrestling industry. These things happen all the time at the worst possible time. And in Bronson Reed's case, it also happened to him. I just wish him a speedy recovery. Hope he keeps his head up, and I hope he gets back on his feet sooner than later. But yeah, it sucks that it had to go down that way. Because I was picking him to win the match. I figured like with the momentum he was having recently and with Braun Breaker out of action, he could like fill that void in the meantime. But now he's hurt too. Yeah, it's crazy, man. So it's probably best, more than likely, if they just put an end to that whole Vision stable because it's just not working. Everybody getting hurt. There's nothing they can really do storyline wise. Yeah, I think it's time. I think it's just time to put it to bed. But we'll see if they do or they don't. Also on Raw, we had Liv Morgan officially announce which champion she will challenge at WrestleMania. And we had Stephanie Vaquer, the women's world champion, in the ring, as well as women's champion from SmackDown, Jade Cargill. And then after what happened last week where Stephanie Vaquer spoke to Liv Morgan in Spanish and then said a bunch of things to make her cry, Liv tried to respond to that this week, telling Stephanie that, she was right about what she said and that she now realizes that she was privileged compared to the struggle that Stephanie Vaquer had to get to where she is. So then she said she was sorry and all that good stuff. But we all know where this was heading. As she then tried to turn her attention to Jade Cargill, she immediately turned around and knocked the hell out Stephanie Vaquer. Knocked her with a hard right. She fell really long and hard, and then Liv just proceeded to attack her some more, later out with the Oblivion, and basically answered the question on which champion she will challenge at WrestleMania. So now it's official. Liv Morgan will challenge Stephanie Vaquer for the Women's World Championship at WrestleMania. This was the worst kept secret in wrestling for the last 3 weeks, but we basically have it official now. And for a segment where the winner of the Royal Rumble was going to announce which champion they would challenge at WrestleMania, there was no life in that audience for that segment whatsoever. And that's sad. That's very sad. And I don't blame Liv Morgan. I don't blame Stephanie Vaquer or Jade Cargill for that. I blame the damn company for that, for making this show so damn uninteresting, uninspiring, and just a damn chore to sit through. And I know it's still early in the WrestleMania build. We haven't gotten to Elimination Chamber yet. I get that. But they have not given us very many reasons to be optimistic so far in the build to WrestleMania. Fingers crossed, Elimination Chamber turns out to be a great show. All of our worries are put to bed, and then everything is great in the build in the weeks leading up to Mania. But over this past year, they have not given us a lot of reasons to have faith. And until they prove otherwise, I'm still going to be skeptical. And you all listening right now have every right to feel the same way as me. So yeah, Liv Morgan shows Stephanie Vaquer as the champion. She'll challenge at WrestleMania. And then we had a promo for CM Punk to hype up the upcoming match at Chamber he's going to have with Finn Balor. And it was fine. It was okay. He had a couple good lines here and there, but just compared to some of the last few promos he's been cutting in recent months, it just wasn't on the same level. I think considering that this was the go-home show to Chamber and the feud him and Finn have been having in recent weeks, this would have been a lot more effective if they had like a face-off or face-to-face, something along those lines. So yeah, doing it this way, it didn't really help in like selling that match and like really, really making people feel like they had to see that match coming up this Saturday. So in that sense, it didn't deliver, but like I said, it was fine for what it was. And then we also had a promo with Paul Heyman with Brock Lesnar standing in the ring. This is Brock Lesnar's first appearance on Raw since the Raw Before Survivor Series 3 months ago. And Brock Lesnar didn't do a damn thing. He just stood there looking mean, looking menacing, while Paul Heyman just did all the talking for him. There was basically no point in even having this segment at all, as basically Heyman said that Lesnar's going to have an open challenge for WrestleMania and then put up on the screen all the dates that Brock's going to be showing up in the next few weeks to build to WrestleMania. And yeah, they could have had somebody come out to confront him. They could have had some kind of confrontation, but they did jack shit. Yeah, honestly, if there was one segment on this show that was a waste of damn time, it was this segment. So yeah, they didn't give us a damn thing here. But also on Raw, we did have another triple threat match for the women to decide who will get the final spot in the Women's Elimination Chamber between Io Sky, one half of the Women's World Tag Team Champions, Raquel Rodriguez, and also Kairi Sane. And I know it's not saying much, but in ring-wise, this was the highlight of the entire show. All three of these women had their working boots on. They definitely did their thing, but ultimately, as much as it would have been nice to see Io Sky qualify and be in the chamber and do all those crazy ass moves, it was not to be, as Raquel Rodriguez established her dominance, laid out Kairi Sane with the Tahana Bomb, and punched her ticket to the chamber this Saturday. I don't have a problem with it. Raquel's been doing her best work over the last year, and she still has that situation with Liv Morgan going on. So, yeah, I don't mind her being in the chamber match. It's cool. It's all good. And honestly, as much as I've talked shit about this whole Raw show this past Monday, and as horrible as it was, and I won't take it back, the one main highlight of this Raw show was the main event segment, and that main event segment was the retirement send-off for AJ Styles. Unfortunately, AJ Styles did lose to Gunther at the Royal Rumble, and because of the stipulation for that match, Styles was forced to retire. And we haven't really seen or heard much from him ever since. And then it was announced last week that since they're going to be close to his hometown of Gainesville, Georgia this week in Atlanta, they would have a special ceremony for Styles this week. And they did a nice video package for him beforehand, before he came out. That was really dope, really well done. And then Styles came out, got a great ovation, gave a nice speech, talked about, like, his time in TNA, his time in Japan, his time in WWE, all the great people he's met and worked with over the years. But the parts about his speech that stood out most is that when he talked about the fact that he's done just about everything, but the one thing that he has not done is be a full-time dad. And obviously he got into, like, all the things that he's missed being on the road all the time, like, birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, etc. And he said, while, like, the biggest flex he should have to brag about would be championships, and some people would think that that would be his biggest flex, the biggest flex for him in reality is the fact that he has the greatest wife in the world. And I respect that. Yeah, just from the whole vibe of his speech, you could, like, definitely tell the dude has a lot of values, has a lot of things that he stands for in that regard. And yeah, it's hard not to respect and like somebody like that. And yeah, he basically thanked the fans. He thanked everyone. He said he loved the fans back. And he did mention that he didn't take his gloves off at the Royal Rumble because he wanted to wait to come home, that being in Georgia, to take his gloves off officially. So that's exactly what he did here. He took off his gloves. The whole roster came out to give him a standing ovation, just kind of like how they did for Ric Flair back in 2008. And also similarly to Ric Flair's retirement send-off in 2008, AJ Styles was greeted by an appearance from The Undertaker. The Undertaker came out in his American Badass gear to the Kid Rock song. He came out to the ring on the motorcycle. He came to Styles and said, "We have unfinished business," making fans think that they might get another match between them at WrestleMania after their first match at WrestleMania was during the pandemic and they couldn't have a proper match. But no, it was not that. It was basically Undertaker coming out to let AJ Styles know that he will be getting inducted into the 2026 WWE Hall of Fame. And yeah, that was great. That was a great way to end the segment. This was very well done. There wasn't a lot of good to say about this show this week on Raw, but that was definitely the highlight of it. It was great to see AJ Styles get the send-off that he did, have everybody come out to show love for him. Because yeah, he definitely made an impact in all the years he was in wrestling, not just in WWE, but everywhere else he was. And you could just definitely tell by, like, the reaction of everybody, the way you saw everybody cry, like Rhea Ripley being one example, also Charlotte Flair, that this man was very well liked and that he will be missed. And honestly, for people to feel that way about him, those qualities in him should be celebrated just as much as everything he did in the ring. So to AJ Styles, I want to wish you the best of luck in the next phase of your life. Thank you for the great moments and matches and memories you gave us as fans over the years, and you definitely earned your retirement send-off that you got this past Monday and your upcoming Hall of Fame induction, and I wish you the best. So now moving on to the future, we do have the Elimination Chamber PLE taking place this coming weekend from the Allstate. I'm sorry, actually, no, I stand corrected. Not the Allstate Arena. It will be taking place at the United Center in Chicago, Illinois, home of the Chicago Bulls. And funny enough, this will be the first PLE or pay-per-view, whichever you prefer calling it, that WWE will be hosting at that arena since SummerSlam 1994. And funny enough, that was around the time I first started watching wrestling and WWE in the first place. So I have a lot of memories of that memorable show. And it's crazy they waited 32 years to bring a major show back to that arena. But I guess with the rents and I guess with other financial issues, they didn't bring shows there regularly. But now, for some reason, this weekend, they are bringing Elimination Chamber there. And unfortunately, from the stories that have been coming out in recent weeks, ticket sales are disappointing for Elimination Chamber, which is a little surprising and not surprising, because it's surprising in the sense that it's it's in Chicago. It's a major PLE, and also it's one of their hottest cities and markets. But it's not surprising in the sense, for one, the amount of damn money they're charging for tickets, and for two, how uninteresting the product has been recently. Because I'll be honest, the more I see the way the build for WrestleMania is playing out so far, the more grateful I am that I'm going to a music festival instead of WrestleMania this year. Because it's one thing when you're having people cough up a bunch of money for a hot product, a great product, but when the product's been the way it's been recently, you're really being a bunch of assholes asking for that much money. Hell, you're being an asshole just for asking for that much in the first place. But that's another story. And also, I hear apparently that they're blocking all the bars and restaurants in the Chicago area from airing Elimination Chamber. Why? Because they want people to cough up their hard-earned money on their overly expensive tickets. And that's some real grimy, foul-ass shit on WWE's part. Yeah, from all their business moves, all their business practices, it is clear to see that these motherfuckers are not the good guys. And I know people are upset. I know people are frustrated with the product, and they're even going as far as to say they want Vince McMahon back. But I just say to those people, please relax. As bad as it is right now, and I will admit that, it's not that bad. It's not that bad to the point where we want that asshole back. And apparently, he's in talks with the Saudi government to buy back WWE from TKO. I mean, it's possible that that could happen. I mean, stranger things have happened before, but as bad as the product is right now and as bad as the TKO bullshit is right now, at the same time, I'm not trying to see Vince McMahon back. That's not anything that'll make the product or the show any better. And if people think that it will, they're in for a rude awakening if, God forbid, that does happen. But in any event, I'm getting off topic a little bit. Yes, we do have Elimination Chamber coming up this coming Saturday. I'm going to break down my predictions for the card real fast. So for the Women's Elimination Chamber, to decide who's going to get a shot at Jade Cargill's Women's Championship at WrestleMania, we have Alexa Bliss, Mommy herself, Rhea Ripley, Raquel Rodriguez, Asuka, Kiana James, and Tiffany Stratton. I would say, unlike the men's Elimination Chamber, the women's Elimination Chamber feels very, very unpredictable. As much as I would have loved Bianca Belair to come back in time for WrestleMania to challenge Jade Cargill, that would have been a money match. But unfortunately, it's not to be, as Bianca just had surgery on her injured finger just last week, and she's on the road to recovery right now. So with that being said, since Bianca will not be involved this year, if there's one person I'm going to pick to win this chamber match, I think I'm going to have to go with Rhea Ripley. I just feel, for one, Rhea Ripley would make a credible challenger for Jade for WrestleMania. Those two would match up together well when you look at them like side by side. And for two, I have a funny feeling that Rhea and Io Sky are going to be dropping those women's tag team titles this coming Friday on SmackDown to Lash Legend and Nia Jax. So with that being said, if that does happen, that frees up Io Sky to possibly go after Julia's United States women's title, and that frees up Rhea Ripley to win the Women's Elimination Chamber and punch her ticket to WrestleMania for a title shot. So with that being said, as unpredictable as this match is, if I have to pick one person to win, I think I'm going to put my money on Rhea Bloody Ripley. So we will see what happens with that match. And in the other women's match on the card for the Women's Intercontinental Championship, we have Becky Lynch defending her championship against the hometown Shiro, AJ Lee. And this match has been building for months, ever since the night AJ Lee returned back in September, also in the city of Chicago, and confronted Becky Lynch. This feud has been going on ever since. And AJ has gotten the better of Becky Lynch at every single turn. She beat her in the mixed tag at WrestlePalooza. She cost Becky the women's IC title to Maxine Dupree on that Raw before Survivor Series. And then at Survivor Series, she beat Becky again in War Games. So with all that momentum and the fact that it's going to be in her hometown, I think she gets the better of Becky once again and wins the Women's Intercontinental Championship. It's a little weird and a little surprising that they're doing this match this soon with WrestleMania still all around the corner. You figured you would be watching that match there as opposed to this soon at Elimination Chamber. But whatever, they're doing the match now. It's cool. I get it. It's Chicago. It's where the feud first started in the first place. So in that sense, I understand why they're doing it. But with me picking AJ to win this weekend, I do think it's going to lead to a rematch at WrestleMania, and that's where Becky will finally get her revenge. But until then, this Saturday, I have AJ Lee winning that women's Intercontinental title, and it's crazy. This is going to be her first singles match in over a decade. The last singles match, if I can remember correctly, that she had was against Nikki Bella at TLC 2014. Because when she came back a few months later, after she was gone for a while after that match, she was doing tag matches with Paige. And then right after that tag match with Paige at WrestleMania, she retired. So yeah, if I remember correctly, that was her last singles match. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. I know the build in recent weeks hasn't really made it feel like a big deal like it should, but I think these two are talented enough and will be motivated enough, and the crowd will be hot enough where it turns out to be good in the end. Because I'm going to say for this match and many of the other matches on this show, they're going to really have to try to make this show not be good. But in any event, I do have AJ Lee winning that women's Intercontinental title. And in our next prediction, we're going to have the men's Elimination Chamber match to decide who gets the shot at Drew McIntyre's WWE Championship at WrestleMania. We have Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, Trick Williams, Javon Evans, Jey Uso, and LA motherfucking Knight. Yeah. And I have to say, this lineup is pretty good. I'm happy that Javon Evans and Trick Williams are getting a shot. They just debuted on the main roster a little over a month ago, and they're already being put in a high-profile match like this. But I feel like it's kind of missing Sami Zayn and also Jacob Fatu, considering that they've had issues with Drew McIntyre in recent months, and also Jacob Fatu and Cody have been feuding in recent months too. So it's kind of weird that those two weren't added in the match. But I do think, as far as who wins the chamber match, it is going to be Cody Rhodes. I think Cody Rhodes somehow, some way finds a way to win. It just feels like it's heading in that direction. But even though he will win, I do think that Drew at WrestleMania is going to end up defending against Cody, Jacob Fatu, Randy Orton, Sami Zayn, possibly a combination of all of them in a multi-person match. Because realistically, Drew McIntyre against Cody Rhodes for the championship again, it's not that interesting. They already had the blow-off for that feud last month in the 3 Stages of Hell match, so they got to switch it up. They got to do something, add different people to make it interesting and spice it up, because if they do another singles match between them again at WrestleMania, that's not going to light the world on fire. I'm sorry, it's not. So I do think they're going to do some kind of multi-person match. I think that's the best route to go. But regardless, I do think Cody Rhodes wins the chamber somehow, some way. And in what I believe will be the main event of the show for the World Heavyweight Championship, we do have the hometown hero, CM Punk, defending his championship against none other than Finn Balor. Their last match they had on Raw a month ago in Ireland in Finn's hometown was great. It definitely made for great television, and their feud as a whole has made for great television over the last few weeks, despite the other parts of the show that have not been good. And I know the outcome of this match is very predictable. It's a foregone conclusion, but I will be honest, I have enjoyed this feud, and it has been a good placeholder for Punk to, occupy his time until Roman Reigns comes back. And while I do believe it will be a good match, and I do think Finn is going to shine in a way that he hasn't shined in a long time, this is going to end in a loss for him, and CM Punk retaining his championship and continuing his journey to WrestleMania and his showdown with Roman Reigns. As far as how the match ends, with the recent tension they've been teasing up again between Finn Balor and Dominic Mysterio, I do think Dominic Mysterio is either accidentally or purposely going to cost Finn the match, and that's going to open the door for Finn and Dominic to finally have the feud that they've been teasing for the last damn year, and finally have the match that they've been teasing for the last damn year at WrestleMania. And considering that Dominic defeated Finn in that 4-way last year at WrestleMania to win the Intercontinental title in the first place, it's only fitting that their match at WrestleMania also be for the Intercontinental title. So Finn Balor will lose to Punk Saturday, but he will turn babyface afterwards and then challenge Dominic for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania. And CM Punk will end the show with the World Heavyweight title held up high in front of his hometown fans, and everybody will go home happy. So yes, that is Elimination Chamber this coming Saturday from Chicago, Illinois, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. And it's going to have a hard act to follow after how great last year's Elimination Chamber show was, but let's see if they can do it. And like I said, I know the product has been uninteresting, uninspiring, and unwatchable in some ways lately, but I'm still going to stay the course, and I still suggest some of you still stay the course. And if by some chance Elimination Chamber ends up sucking and not delivering, then it'll be time to worry. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So let's get in to our Wrestling Delorean as we do this month's edition of Wrestling Review Rewind. I was originally going to do No Way Out 2004. We were originally going to do that for our episode this month, but since John Randall's going through his current situation, I figured I'd do a different show. So today we're going to be covering No Way Out 2000. And this was one of my favorite shows at the time it happened back in 2000. At that point, I think the WWE product was the best it had ever been. That's the most I had ever enjoyed it up until that point. And this show was dead smack in the middle of it. Despite Stone Cold Steve Austin being out of commission with a neck injury, with the way the rest of the talent stepped up and how great the storylines were and the angles were during this time, you really didn't dwell on the fact that he was gone so much. I mean, granted, you still missed him. In many ways, it would have been better if he had been around, but the rest of the roster stepped their game up. Everybody else stepped their game up so hard that they didn't miss a beat. The show was no less good without Stone Cold Steve Austin, and arguably so, the product as a whole was the best it had ever been throughout that time frame that he was out of action. And two of the people that stepped up the hardest in that time frame that Stone Cold Steve Austin was gone were The Rock and Triple H. And they were in the two main events of this show that we're going to dive into a little bit later. But yeah, I just remember this time frame of WWE so vividly. My personal life wasn't the best at the time. I was going through a lot of personal stuff that I'm not going to dive too deeply into today. But even despite those personal things I was dealing with and maybe not being the happiest in my life in that regard, the one thing that always brought me happiness, the one thing that always made me feel good that I could just lose myself in every single time was the WWE product. And yeah, like I said before, the product was as hot as it had ever been by this point. They were coming off of a great Royal Rumble show from Madison Square Garden the month before, and now this is the next stop on their road to WrestleMania that year. But not only was the world of WWE really hot at the time and probably at the hottest it had ever been, also the world of pop culture, music, and movies was white hot during this time. And the number one song during the time of this No Way Out show was I Knew I Loved You by Savage Garden. I'm telling you guys, in that late 90s, early 2000s period, those boy bands, those little soft love ballads, they were killing it. Those songs were always like the number one songs. People listening to them nonstop. Women going crazy for these dudes when they see them in the damn mall. Number one on TRL every day. Yeah, it was no joke with them. The Backstreet Boys, NSYNC. Yeah, those boy bands and those like heartthrobs, they were everywhere during this time, son. And speaking of the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, they were also doing their thing at this time, and they had their songs respectively out during this time. I Want to Live That Way Forever, I think it was called, from Backstreet Boys. And then there was that Bye 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 song from NSYNC. I remember that shit very, very vividly. So yeah, pop culture was definitely a different animal during this time. TRL was still hot. South Park was still hot. And also one person who was really white hot during this time, and I know this very well as a hip hop head, was DMX, along with the Rough Rider crew. And DMX's third album, and then there was X, that just dropped the previous December, and it was still doing work around this time with the singles What's My Name, also What These Bitches Want. I'm quoting the song, please forgive me, and also Party Up, which come out not too long after this. So yeah, If you have any question on who the hottest rapper in hip hop was around this time frame, without a shadow of a doubt, it was DMX. From the years 1998 to 2000, I don't think there was anybody that was hotter than him. Granted, he had strong competition from Jay-Z, Eminem, Busta Rhymes, Big Pun, you name it. He had some tough competition, but DMX just had that aura. And especially if you see his performance from Woodstock 99, DMX was just in another stratosphere during these years. Granted, his peak eventually fizzled out, and he wasn't the same anymore after a while, but during this time frame that I'm talking about today, there was nobody that was touching DMX. One of the reasons why he's still missed to this day. And not even just DMX, also three people who were killing it during this time were his stablemates in the Rough Rider crew, the Locks, who had just recently got out of their contract from that piece of shit Diddy and Bad Boy. They started a whole damn campaign called Free the Locks, where they were having people wear shirts that said it. They were holding up signs. They were trying to get the fuck out of that Bad Boy contract, and I did not blame them one bit. And eventually it did work. They got out of it. They signed with Rough Riders, and the difference between the vibe of the Locks on Bad Boy and on Rough Riders is night and day. That We Are the Streets album that dropped around the time of this No Way Out show had bangers on it for days. From Fuck You, Breathe Easy, Wild Out, Recognize, the We Are the Streets title track. Yeah, these do Blood Pressure, Y'all Fucked Up Now. Yeah, the list of joints that they had on this album is endless. And yeah, it was just a different energy, a different vibe with that whole Rough Rider crew during that time, from DMX, The Locks, Eve. Yeah, it was a hot time in hip hop. And yeah, they were definitely one of those dominant groups during that time, along with Rockefeller, along with Cash Money, then Murder Inc. later on. Yeah, it was just a different vibe in hip hop during these years, a different fun energy that existed back then that in many ways doesn't exist anymore. Granted, there's still great music to be found. There's still great concerts to go to and whatnot, but it was just a different energy back then. Anybody who lived during that era could definitely testify to that. It was just different back then. And in many ways, I miss it. But in other genres of music, one group that was killing it during this time was also Jagged Edge, as their J.E. Heartbreak album came out the month before. And in many people's opinion, that is their best album and best piece of work that they've ever done. And honestly, I can't disagree with that. They may have had a bigger peak as far as popularity went in their next album with the Where the Party At song and whatnot, but as far as the quality of their music, they were never better than they were on the J.E. Heartbreak album. From He Can't Love You, Keys to the Range, Let's Get Married, Promise, yo, it would be hard to listen to that song with a girl and like not fall in love with each other. Like, that's the vibe that I miss of R&B, especially back then. Is for one, the R&B groups, because they had R&B groups for days. And for two, like, listening to those songs, they just like made you want to, do right by a girl and like, actually like, give your all to a girl, whether it's a girl that you're with or a girl you're trying to woo, whatever it is. Yeah, they just had that different energy back then. And honestly, I hate to say it, R&B songs and also the Corey and Topanga couple from Boy Meets World were the only examples growing up I had of like true loving relationships. I know that's not healthy, but it is what it is. It's the way that I grew up during that time. But yeah, that's if there was any place where I got the idea that loving and healthy relationships did exist, it was from those areas, for better or worse. But in any event, in addition to the hot music out during this time, also what was hot was the movies that were out during this time. And the number one movie at the time of this No Way Out 2000 show was The Whole Nine Yards with the late Matthew Perry and also Bruce Willis. And it's unfortunate. I was actually watching a little documentary about Friends last night. It's unfortunate Matthew Perry passed away. Honestly, as far as the characters on Friends, he was arguably the funniest one on the whole show. And he also killed it in this movie too. I've only seen it maybe once or twice, but I remember liking it. And it's funny. He and Bruce Willis made a bet around the time they were filming this movie. And because Bruce Willis lost the bet, he had to make a guest star appearance on Friends. So if you ever watch those episodes of Friends in season 6 where Bruce Willis is on there and he's like Ross's girlfriend's dad, like Ross's like young girlfriend's dad. That's why he's on the show, because he lost a damn bet to Matthew Perry. So yeah, that movie was out during that time. Snow Day was also out during this time. Also, Scream 3, the worst in the entire franchise, that came out earlier that month. That's one of the few Scream movies I actually never saw in theaters. And looking back at it now, I'm very grateful that I didn't see it in theaters. I'm really looking forward to the new one that comes out this weekend. I'm going to see that shit in IMAX. But yeah, Scream 3, I hate to say it, Scream 3 was not it. Not it at all. But hopefully Scream 7 delivers, and maybe it can continue the franchise going if it needs to continue going. But I'm still looking forward to going to see it. I'll never get tired of going to the movies to see a Scream movie. It's a fun vibe. So yeah, those movies were out during that time. Also, Aaron Brockovich will come out not too long after this, as well as Beyond the Mat. Believe it or not, Beyond the Mat actually came out around this time too. I don't know if many of you have seen that documentary, but yeah, that's definitely one of the wrestling documentaries that sticks out most to me. I remember watching it when I was younger. I think I was maybe 14 when I first saw it. And yeah, it tripped me out. Yeah, it really did. From the Foley stuff with The Rock, also the ECW stuff, the stuff with Terry Funk, and especially the stuff with Jake the Snake. Yeah, it was a really hardcore documentary, and it really opened my eyes at a young age to the realities of the wrestling business. So yeah, those are some of the movies that were out during this time too. Also, pop-in television shows that were on during this time. Obviously, Friends, I mentioned a second ago. Friends was all at its peak probably during this period. Also, Frasier was still on. Also, Everybody Loves Raymond. I never watched the show, but people seem to like it a lot. People always just seem to rave about it. Also, King of Queens was on during this time. And one of my favorite shows, Boy Meets World, was actually still on during this time, but it was in its last season. And as much as I love that show, I will admit by this point it was time for it to end. So yeah, television was still fun. You had your TRLs. 106 in Park actually started later that year. You had the great music videos I would watch all day, movies I would watch all day, etc. Yeah, it was, the entertainment we had during that time was second to none. And honestly, like talking about this right now, it makes me even extra sad that my podcast partner isn't here to talk about these things with, because one of the main things we bonded over besides wrestling initially was just our love for like pop culture, like movies, music, TV shows, all that good stuff, basketball. Yeah, we've always bonded over all of those things. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like this show has the energy that it does. So yeah, my partner John Mano, you can't come back soon enough, but I understand you need time. Take all the time you need. All right, in any event, so yeah, during this time frame, I was 13 years old. I was still living in South Florida at my grandma's house. My mother was not living there during that time. It was a whole weird thing, but luckily, a month later, my mom would reveal to my brother and I that she bought us a house, and that we would move in there right after WrestleMania. So things were slowly starting to look up during this time. I remember I was overweight actually in my early years, my early teen years, but then I would say right when I turned 13, going into like this show, this is when I really started to lose weight and really just started to notice a difference in my body. And yeah, honestly, it's a weird thing to talk about as an adult, but yeah, looking back at it back then, it was like one of those first things that showed me that I can change. And while like I don't like hearing that excuse that we can't change, we should just be who we are. That's just who I am. Take it or leave it. Yeah, 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 yeah. Now, honestly, if you really want to change and if you're willing to do the work to change, you can change. But you just gotta want it. And one thing I always wanted and couldn't get enough of during this time frame was WWE television. And especially these pay-per-views. The pay-per-views in the year 2000 for WWE were second to none. And coming off of a hot pay-per-view they had the month before at the Royal Rumble for Madison Square Garden, this No Way Out show would have a very tough act to follow. But going into the show with the build and the matches they had set for it, they more than held up their end of it. They more than lived up to the standards that Royal Rumble show the month before had set. I can't say it's a better show than that Royal Rumble show was, but it was no less good. This No Way Out show is one of the best WWE pay-per-views you will ever watch. And that year, 2000, had great pay-per-views for days, from that Royal Rumble show I mentioned, also Backlash, Judgment Day, Fully Loaded, SummerSlam, you name it. This year had so many classic pay-per-views, and this No Way Out show is definitely one you can add to that list. So yes, it was live from Hartford, Connecticut on February 27, 2000. I did watch the show live on pay-per-view that night, and it opened with the Intercontinental Championship match between Chris Jericho with Chyna in his corner, which was very odd because they had been feuding for months before this, defending his Intercontinental title against the new European champion, Kurt Angle. And Kurt Angle had just debuted in the company a few months earlier at the Survivor Series, and since his debut, he was on a damn roll. He had a long undefeated streak. He was like working matches with The Rock, with Kane, Triple H, and he even won the European Championship just a few weeks before this show, and now he's getting a shot at the Intercontinental Championship. And these two right here, Chris Jericho and Kurt Angle, were two of the most important additions that WWE had to their roster during this time frame. Because you had Stone Cold Steve Austin out of action and whatnot, and even when Stone Cold Steve Austin was on top in the Attitude Era, like earlier, like in 98, 99, admittedly so, the undercard for WWE during those years wasn't the strongest. But by this point in 2000, that undercard for WWE was the strongest it had been in probably a decade. And two of the people you can credit for making that undercard so strong were Chris Jericho and Kurt Angle. And they showed it in this match. This match was solid. They were only given about 10 minutes to work with, but they made good use of the time they did have. And then ultimately, at one point, Kurt Angle got bumped into Chyna outside the ring into the steel steps, and the referee was distracted by this. And as the referee was distracted and Jericho attempted a lion salt on the Kurt Angle held up the Intercontinental title for Jericho to fall on top of, and that led to Angle putting one arm on Jericho to get the pin and become what he would call himself as the Euro Continental Champion. So yes, in just 3 months, Kurt Angle has an undefeated streak, wins the European Championship, and now wins the Intercontinental Championship. Holy shit. And he would only have an even better year as it went on. And arguably so, he had one of the best rookie years in WWE history besides Brock Lesnar. And this was another stop on that great year. And he was not only great in the ring, but damn was he entertaining. And you saw that entertainment value that he had throughout that run really smack in the middle of this show. It's like right after he wins the Intercontinental title, he's like celebrating in the crowd. He's celebrating with the fans. He's like pouring popcorn on himself. He's pouring soda on himself, like talking on the megaphone, saying how he's going to be their champion, be a champion they could be proud of. Yeah, this dude was wild and big time. But it would come back to bite him towards the end of the night as he was getting into his car to leave the arena. He was attacked by Chris Jericho and Chyna and thrown into the trunk of his rental car. Damn. But in any event, let's move on to our next match for the WWE Tag Team Championship. We had the New Age Outlaws defending against the Dudley Boys. And this is around the time the Dudley Boys really started to get hot, coming off of that great tables match they had with the Hardy Boys at the Royal Rumble. And this was around the time they were really becoming notorious for putting their opponents through the tables. And not only their opponents through tables, they were even putting women through tables. These motherfuckers did not care. And one of the main instances of this was the night after the Royal Rumble where the Dudleys actually put Terry Runnels, the manager at the time of the Hardy Boys, through a table. Yeah, I remember when they did that night on Raw. I'm like, yo, these dudes are menaces. These dudes are evil, son. Yeah, they were really on a tear during this time. They were building a lot of momentum, and it would lead to them getting a shot at the tag team titles against the New Age Outlaws. And noticeably in this match, Billy Gunn only tagged in for a few seconds. As the Thursday before on SmackDown, Billy Gunn did a famous sort of Bubba Ray through a table. But as he jumped up to do it and landed, he injured his shoulder. So he didn't really work too much in this match. And then one point in the match, Bubba Ray pulled him out of the ring and then hit him in his injured shoulder with a pipe to take him out of the match. And that led to the Dudleys laying out Road Dogg with the 3D to get the win and win the WWE Tag Team titles for the very first time. And in many ways, I feel like this match was a passing of the torch moment because the New Age Outlaws were like the top team throughout most of the Attitude Era. And now at this point, it switched from them being the top team to the Dudleys, Hardys, and Edge and Christian being the top teams, and the whole division more centered around them. And while the New Age Outlaws were great, they were entertaining, they definitely stood out during those years. From a match quality perspective, they were not on the same level as those three other teams. From those crazy-ass ladders matches and tables matches and all that jazz. Yeah, it was just a different level with those three teams, and it would get only crazier and even better as the year went on. So yes, the Dudley Boys won the tag team titles for the very first time here, and ultimately Billy Gunn would officially be written off TV the next night on Raw as Road Dogg, along with the rest of DX, kicked them out of the group. Damn. Yeah, in many ways, this show was like the last night of the whole original DX. Like, I know they broke up at WrestleMania 15 and they got back together a few months later, but when you look at it now, like this night was really like the last night of that. It's like they kicked out Billy Gunn the next night, and then like kind of Triple H and Stephanie were doing their own thing, and then Vince and Shane got involved and whatnot. So yeah, it just was never the same vibe with DX after this, and understandably so. So on to our next match, a match I'd like to forget. We had Mark Henry going one-on-one with Viscera. And the way this match came about was the Monday before on Raw. Mark Henry's boo thing at the time, Mae Young, don't ask. And the way this match came about was the Monday before. Mark Henry at the time, his boo thing, Mae Young, don't ask, was laid out with a hard and devastating splash from Viscera. This dude is damn 500 pounds and he's splashing a 77-year-old lady. The fuck is that? And she was pregnant too. Well, we'll dive into that part of it in a little bit. But in any event, we had the match here. It was like an impromptu match that was added at the last minute. And then Mae Young tries to interfere on Mark Henry's behalf, and then Viscera is about to splash Mae Young again, but then Mark Henry stops him, hits him with a spear, followed by a body slam to pick up the win, and that was that. But I will say, this whole storyline got even weirder the next night on Raw, as the next night on Raw was that infamous segment where Mae Young gave birth to a motherfucking hand. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you guys this, who never watched the show during that time frame. They literally had a segment where Mae Young, a 77-year-old lady, is dating this black dude who's like 30, 40 years younger than her, and she gets pregnant randomly. A month later, she goes into labor and gives birth to a hand. This is a prime example of why people say not everything from the Attitude Era was good. Specifically, the stuff they did with the women. As fun as it was during that time, as chaotic as it was, as entertaining as it was, this whole thing was a prime example of how not all of it was good. And in all honesty, a healthy chunk of it was dog shit. Yeah, that's the best way I could put it. Yeah, for every great segment we had with The Rock, with Triple H, with Chris Jericho, with Kurt Angle, and Rikishi and Too Cool, we got dog shit segments like that one with Mae Young giving birth to a hand. So yeah, you had to take the good with the bad during that time. So yeah, that was what it was. So let's move on to our next match. This was a good one. This is one of the best matches on the whole show. We had Edge and Christian going against the Hardy Boys with Terry Reynolds back in their corner. And the winner of this match will get a shot at the WWE Tag Team Championship. And coming out on behalf of Terry Reynolds as well was Farouk Bradshaw, the APA. As Terry Reynolds earlier in the show hired them for their services. As Terry Reynolds earlier in the night hired them for their services to protect her from the Dudley Boys potentially. So that's why they were out there, or so we thought. And yeah, these two teams were magic together. Not even with the ladder matches and table matches and whatnot, just having a regular tag match between these two teams was definitely something that added to the quality of the shows. Yeah, these two teams had great chemistry. They were coming off of that great ladder match they had a few months prior at No Mercy, where the Hardys actually won Terry's managerial services. So yeah, this match was good. They had the higher stakes because they were fighting for the tag team titles, and they were both more popular by this point than they were initially. And at one point in the match, Jeff Hardy's on the top rope about to do a swanton bomb. And then for some reason, Terry Reynolds is standing on the apron. And what does she do? She pushes Jeff Hardy off the damn top rope. The fuck is that shit? So yeah, she pushes Jeff Hardy off the top rope, and then she smacks Matt Hardy, and that leads to Christian laying out Matt Hardy with the Unprettier, and then Edge and Christian win the match and win a future shot at the tag team titles. And as Terry's trying to leave, Matt Hardy grabs her by the hair and like talking shit to her, and then Farouk and Bradshaw attack Matt and Jeff Hardy, and Farouk, I kid you not, hits Jeff Hardy with the gnarliest dominator you will ever see. He literally dropped this dude right on his damn head. So pretty much the whole time, Terry hired the APA to attack the Hardys and protect it from the Hardys and not the Dudleys. So I guess Terry had the feeling that the Hardys didn't save her from being attacked by the Dudleys, and this is her way of getting back at them. So yeah, that was that. No more Terry with the Hardy Boys. But honestly, it worked out better that way because Lita, who would join them a few months later, was a much better fit with them than Terry Runnels was. So yeah, good match. And then after the match, Edge and Christian are doing an interview with Michael Cole, and Christian's kind of like not happy about the way they won the match. And then Edge is kind of like talking him out of it, saying like, bro, who cares? The Hardys would have taken that win the exact same way. We won the match. That's all that matters. Now we get a title shot. And this will be the first seed planted into the eventual Edge and Christian heel turn we would see a few weeks later before WrestleMania. And I have to say, it was the best thing for them. As great as they were, as great as they came off in that ladder match, they were kind of the overlooked team compared to the Dudleys and also the Hardys. So when they turned heel, like right before WrestleMania, that was exactly the missing ingredient that they needed. And they were going to have great success throughout that year, winning the major TLC and triangle ladder matches they had. Also, like becoming more entertaining, doing the 5-second poses, all that good stuff. Yeah, they were on their way by this point. They really were. And in another part of the show, I would like to forget, we did have the match between Taz and the Big Boss Man that was added at the last minute. And it's very sad to see how far Taz had fallen within 1 month of his debut at the Royal Rumble. When he came out at the Royal Rumble, he got that great reaction, that great ovation, and people lost their damn minds. He killed Kurt Angle within just a few minutes in their match. And then 1 month later, he's in a random impromptu match with the Big Boss Man. Yeah, he really cooled off really fast. It was really unfortunate to see, but he even said himself that he kind of knew it was going to happen after that reaction he got that first night. So yeah, here he basically has a match with Boss Man that ends within a few minutes after Prince Albert interferes on Big Boss Man's behalf. They both attack Taz. Even Boss Man breaks his nightstick over Taz's face. And yeah, it was just that. Yeah, for the way Taz came off in his debut at the Royal Rumble to have him doing this a month later, yeah, it's really sad to see how far they let him fall from that peak he had at the very beginning. A part of it was probably the debut of a few other guys I'm going to get into in a few minutes, but still, it was really sad to see where Taz had gone from his debut to only 1 month later being where he was at this point. In our next match, one of the biggest matches on the show, we had Kane going one-on-one with his former best friend, X-Pac, in a no-holds-barred match. And Kane and X-Pac the year before in 99, they were tag team partners and they were really close. They became really good friends over time. And then X-Pac eventually rejoined D-Generation X as a heel faction. And right after he rejoined DX as a heel faction, he turned on Kane. So they were feuding for a few months, and around this time, Kane was also dating Tori. And then they did this one storyline where Tori had to spend the holidays with X-Pac, and then when she came back from spending the holidays with X-Pac, she actually liked it. She said she had a good time. And then fast forward to a few weeks later, DX and X-Pac are all beating up Kane. They have him tied up into the ropes. And then X-Pac and Tori reveal that they've been fooling around behind Kane's back the whole damn time. They start kissing and feeling up on each other right in front of him. And then Kane is obviously distraught. He's hurt, heartbroken by all this. And then we don't see him for a few weeks. And then lo and behold, on a Raw just a few weeks later from Dallas, actually one of the hottest Raws you'll ever see is that episode of Raw from February of 2000, February 7th, where at the end of a 10-man tag match at main event of the show, Paul Bear suddenly comes back, and coming back with Paul Bear is Kane. And Kane comes in, cleans house, fucks everybody up on sight. And then the following Friday on SmackDown, Tori tries to beg Kane to show mercy on her, to take her back, how she wants him back. But Kane wasn't having none of that. So instead of falling into her trap, he laid her ass out with a tombstone. So throughout this time, they were calling Tori Tombstone Tori, Tombstone Tori. They were saying that stuff on commentary all the time. And then Kane wins a handicap match against Triple H and Big Show to get a match with X-Pac at No Way Out. And on the go-home SmackDown before No Way Out, Kane takes a I'm sorry, not Kane. X-Pac takes a flamethrower and then sprays it onto Kane, and then Kane gets burned and falls down. You see, that's a way you do a final sell for a big match for a pay-per-view. That's how you do it. Back in 2000, WWE were the masters of those cliffhangers before a big pay-per-view. Like those Raws and SmackDowns before the big pay-per-views, they were the masters at selling that pay-per-view on those shows. Like that last image on SmackDown before it went off the air, you were just saying to yourself, damn, I gotta see that show. Like, that's just the way that product was during that time, especially in 2000. Raw, SmackDown, the pay-per-views, they were literally must-see TV. And I don't exaggerate when I say that. But in any event, we did have the match between Kane and X-Pac. The match was a lot of fun, actually. This was actually also one of the better matches on the show. And then at one point in the match, Tori's trying to jump onto Kane's back, but then Kane pulls her down into a tombstone position and then lays her ass out with another tombstone. Yeah, I don't think Kane's going to be winning any points in the Me Too movement, but I have to say he does have his reasons for treating Tori the way he did, but that's another story for another time. So yeah, Kane picks up the steel steps, and then X-Pac drop kicks the steel steps into Kane's face, and then X-Pac puts the steps and presses them onto Kane and then pins him, and X-Pac picks up the win, shockingly. You just figured with the way this feud had been going, considering that X-Pac turned on Kane and then took his girlfriend from him too, that this is all leading to Kane finally getting his revenge in the end. But nope, X-Pac picked up the win here, and this feud would drag on for another month up until WrestleMania, where they would blow it off in a random tag team match. It is what it is. It's disappointing that they didn't just blow off a feud here, but this match is still enjoyable. I still liked it. And yeah, X-Pac picked up the win. And in another great match from this show, we did have a 6-man tag pitting Rikishi and Too Cool against the 3 men that just debuted in the company just a month before, defecting from WCW, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, and Perry Saturn, the Radicals. As many of us know, the last few years of WCW were garbage, to say the very least. Dog shit, trash, horrible, waste of fucking time, any derogatory word you could think of. That's what WCW was by 99, 2000. And it got so bad that 4 of the core men of their undercard, that being Benoit, Saturn, Malenko, and also Eddie Guerrero, who was in their corner for this match, all 4 of them decided to jump ship from WCW to WWE. And I will never forget that night on Raw when they showed up in the front row at the beginning of the show, and I was in shock. Because it's one thing when the top stars from each company jump ship, but when the mid-card guys from the rival company jump ship to the other one, yeah, it was a huge surprise. And not even just one of them, 4 of them. There were many death nails in WCW where there was like no coming back for them, and that was definitely one of them. When they lost the Radicals, when they lost Benoit, Guerrero, Saturn, and Malenko, yeah, there was very little they could do to rebound from that. And it was proven as the year went on. But in any event, this would be their first official pay-per-view as a part of WWE. Eddie Guerrero was injured at the time. He had an injured shoulder that he suffered in his actual first match on SmackDown when he did a frog splash. So yeah, he was just outside being a pest, like doing a bunch of outside interference shenanigans, and that would come back to backfire on him as Rikishi would take a pipe that Eddie Guerrero tried to sneak into the match and nail him with it in his injured shoulder. So that would be the last we would see of Eddie Guerrero on that night. And yeah, this was a fun-ass match. I have to say, this was a real fun, entertaining 6-man tag. All 6 of these men worked well together, and Rikishi and Too Cool were white hot during this time. There's nothing they could do could miss with the fans, from the dancing, the stink face, the worm. When Grandmaster Sexay would put his goggles on and do the leg drop from the top rope, yeah, these dudes were over. Like, you want to hear the word over, people use that word a lot. That's where Rikishi and Too Cool were during this time. One of the funnest acts in the entire company. I do not exaggerate. So ultimately, Rikishi and Too Cool pick up the win after Rikishi lays out Dean Malenko with a Rikishi driver followed by the Banzai drop, and then Rikishi and Too Cool dance after the match, have a good time, and yeah, all good vibes. Nothing bad I could say about this match. And in one of our main events of No Way Out 2000, we had in a match to decide who will get a shot at the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. We had The Rock putting his title shot that he won at the Royal Rumble on the line against The Big Show. And the way this match all came about was the month before at the Royal Rumble, The Rock and The Big Show were the last two men in the match. And as The Big Show was about to eliminate The Rock held on to the ropes and then Big Show fell out. But the thing was, The Rock's feet did technically hit the ground first. But the referees and no one saw it at the time, so The Rock technically won the Royal Rumble. And in the weeks after, Big Show was trying to plead his case about the fact that The Rock's feet hit the ground first. He got the security guy to, tell Triple H that had happened. He also tried to get like pictures, but it still wasn't enough. And then he eventually found video footage that proved it. And then after Triple H saw that, he granted Big Show his wish, and he gave him a match against The Rock for No Way Out, where the winner would officially get the title shot. And going back to watch this show, I forgot how entertaining and fun this feud was. Just the way The Rock would make fun of the Big Show, how he would do the like how he would do all that. Yeah, it was hilarious. And yeah, they had a lot of good stakes for this feud with like the title shot at WrestleMania on the line. And yeah, like the Big Show did legit have a case for winning the Royal Rumble. So yeah, they had a good story going into this match. And yeah, this match definitely felt like a big deal. The match itself was just okay, I will admit. The match itself was just okay, but what really helped set it over the top was the angle itself and also the antics. That's one thing I will say. And that was very present in this match as it progressed, as at one point in the match, Big Show laid out The Rock with a choke slam as the referee was down. And then another referee, that being Tim White, came in to do the count. And as he was doing the count for Big Show, the referee who was knocked down, Earl Hebner, pulled him out of the ring. The two of them get into an argument, kind of like replaying what happened earlier in the show when they got into an argument after the Angle and Chris Jericho match. And then Tim White starts beating up Earl Hebner for some reason. That was a little strange. And in the middle of all this, Shane McMahon, who hadn't been seen on TV for months, came out. So Shane McMahon comes out to a big reaction. He's kind of like refereeing the referees fighting each other. And then as this is all going on, The Rock hits the Big Show with a chair, lays him out with a rock bottom. But as he attempts to go for a people's elbow, Shane McMahon takes the chair and lays out The Rock with it. Damn. And that would ultimately lead to the Big Show putting one hand on The Rock to get the win and punch his ticket to WrestleMania. I remember watching this at the time and I could not freaking believe it. Like, this match was so predictable, you didn't think there was any chance the Big Show was actually going to beat The Rock and get the title shot at WrestleMania instead. And then when they did this, you're like, what the hell? They can't do this. They can't not have The Rock in the main event of WrestleMania. Yeah, it was really weird. It was a really interesting swerve that they pulled here. But considering how it led to that weird and confusing build for the WrestleMania 2000 main event, I would have rather just had The Rock win and then that be that. But that's not what they did here. Big Show won with Shane McMahon's help, and that started the team between Big Show and Shane. And then that would ultimately lead to the whole McMahon in every corner WrestleMania main event, which I'll dive into a little later. So yeah, Big Show picks up the win here. Shocking upset though. That was the thing with The Rock. Even at the height of his popularity, you never heard of him, being stingy when it came to losing matches. He lost matches all the time. More than Hogan did in his peak, more than Austin did in his peak, Triple H, Shawn, you name it. Yeah, Bret. Yeah, The Rock, for whatever reason, he was never against putting other people over. And for a top guy, you got to give somebody credit for that, especially at his level. And on to the main event. The match we were all here to watch for the WWE Championship inside Hell in a Cell. We had Triple H defending his title with Stephanie McMahon in his corner against Cactus Jack. These two had an incredible, violent, over-the-top street fight at the Royal Rumble the month before. Personally, one of the greatest matches I've ever seen in all my years of being a fan. And it was really a crucial time with Stone Cold Steve Austin being out, as I said before. These two men specifically really stepped up their game in this feud during this time to the point where you weren't even thinking about Stone Cold Steve Austin that much because this feud was so good and the other talent was so great and so entertaining that, yeah, you didn't really have much time to dwell on Stone Cold Steve Austin because everything else was so good. So yeah, there's not enough good things I could say about this feud during this time. I know they feuded before back in '97, but this was by far the peak of the feud between Triple H and Mick Foley. That great match they had at the Royal Rumble, and then a few weeks later, Triple H says he'll give Cactus a rematch at No Way Out for the title. And then Cactus picks the stipulation for it to be Hell in a Cell, but Triple H puts the stipulation in that if Cactus Jack loses, he has to retire. So yeah, as great as that Royal Rumble match was the month before, the stakes were high for this match in a way they hadn't been for any main event in WWE history up until this point. Because when I tell you it was must-see TV during this time frame, this was one of the reasons why. This is one of those few times, actually, looking back at it now, where I noticed where the main event for the February pay-per-view before WrestleMania was in some cases every bit as big, if not bigger, than the main event for WrestleMania itself. That's how great these storylines were during this time, these angles were, the talent at delivering in these major moments. That's how on top of the world and how great the WWE product was in this 2000 period. So yeah, the stakes were high. This was a big deal. I didn't care about anything on earth this day except for watching this show and this match specifically. And I have to say, with the exception of the outcome, I was not disappointed. While I can't say it's better than their match at the Royal Rumble was, it was still damn close. As these two men literally went to hell and lived up to the Hell in a Cell title. This is still in the first few years of Hell in a Cell, as a matter of fact. This is actually only the fourth major Hell in a Cell match they did, which is actually weird to think about. But damn, they really made this stipulation in this match feel like a big deal. Like, for all the hype that there was going into this match, they more than lived up to it and more than delivered on their end. So yeah, there's one point in the match where Cactus Jack is trying to get out of the cell, but he notices that the door is chained shut. So that eliminates that plan, at least for the time being. So they fight in the cell for the most part, up until one point where Cactus Jack, I believe, tries to throw the steel steps at Triple H, but then Triple H ducks. But then Triple H, when he ducks, that causes the steel steps to go through the cell, and that opens up like a little door for Foley to get out of. So then he pushes himself through the door, he rams himself through the door and actually cuts his arm really bad in the process. And then he throws Triple H through it. So then they start fighting outside of the cell. He pile drives Triple H on top of the announce table. And then Triple H tries to get away. He tries to climb up the cell. And then Cactus comes after him. But then as Cactus is trying to get on top of it, Triple H is stomping on his fingers. And this ultimately leads to Cactus falling off the top of the cell through the announce table. And while this wasn't as crazy as the time he fell off the top of the cell at King of the Ring with Undertaker 2 years before, this was still a gnarly ass fall from that top of that cell through the table. Yeah, that was rough. I'm not going to lie, it was rough. And just like the Hell in a Cell match with Undertaker 2 years before, Foley refused medical help, and instead of getting taken out on a stretcher, he got right back up and got right back on top of the cell to fight Triple H. And while admittedly he did try to throw a chair up there a couple of times and he missed, he eventually took it up with him and also took up a 2x4 with him to fight Triple H on top of the cell. And then he took it up a notch on the hardcoreness as he took the 2x4 and then set it on fire. So Foley takes a flaming 2x4 and starts hitting Triple H with it multiple times. And then he attempts to give Triple H a pile driver on the flaming 2x4 on top of the cell. But then Triple H reverses it into a back body drop. And this causes Foley to fall through the cell, through the damn mat below. Damn, son. That bump he took at King of the Ring when he fell through the cell was crazy too. But this bump, the way it looked when it happened the first time, my jaw dropped. I'm sure all of your jaws dropped the first time you saw it too. But then when he went through that cell and then through the damn ring, you're like, what the fuck? Did that really just happen? Like, I know this dude is tough. I know this dude has heart, but like, how does he get up from that? Like, what else can he do to continue by that point? Yeah, this dude is literally sucked into the mat. Like, not falling on the mat, falling through the mat. So yeah, Foley's done. He looks like he's done. He's like barely conscious. And then Triple H eventually makes his way back down there. And then Foley, by some miracle, just keeps his hand up. He still attempts to continue the match. He gets back up, or at least attempts to, and then Triple H keeps hitting him with hard rights, keeps knocking him down, and then ultimately Triple H lays out Cactus with a pedigree. And JR keeps saying kick out Cactus as the referee counts 1, 2, 3, and it was not meant to be. Cactus Jack did not kick out. Triple H won the match, retained his championship, and as a result of the stipulation, Mick Foley was forced to retire. And I gotta say, as a longtime wrestling fan, this is one of the most emotional retirements I have ever seen in my years of watching this product and watching this art form as a whole. Just as somebody who followed kind of Mick Foley from the Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazines, that's initially when I first learned about him, to seeing his work in WWE and the crazy amount of pain and crazy amount of punishment he would take in his matches. Just after a few years, after a while, like when you watch somebody like that enough, who's willing to give that much of themselves for your entertainment, it's hard not to respect them and it's hard not to admire them. And in all my years of being a fan, one of the people I admire the most from a in-ring standpoint, character standpoint, and also just as a human being from the things I've seen of him, it's definitely Mick Foley. And one last time he showed that in this performance, and unfortunately, because of the stipulation, he was forced to retire, or so we thought. Because they do this whole big retirement scene for him after the match where he refuses to get on the stretcher. He wants to walk out on his own. And JR is like saying some real emotional shit on commentary, talking about how there's a lot of jerks in this business. There's a lot of asses in this business. But Mick Foley's one of the finest people I've ever met in wrestling and out of wrestling. And then as Foley's like standing in front of the entranceway, you can see him crying. You see him getting very emotional. And the fans are just cheering for him, clapping for him. And then at the end of the pay-per-view, when the copyright box comes up, JR just basically says, Godspeed, Mick Foley. Yeah, great match. One of the best main events I've ever seen, but damn, one of the saddest endings to a match I've ever seen. Yeah, I was really pulling for Mick Foley hard. I was really having my fingers crossed that he'd be able to pull it off, but it just wasn't meant to be. And yeah, this whole feud between Triple H and Cactus Jack during this time, this really solidified Triple H as a main eventer. Because people had their doubts about him being the champion and being the main guy the show was centered around during this period. But with the match with Foley from the Royal Rumble the month before and this match here, he put all those doubts to bed. This is one of the best feuds and two of the best matches from WWE that you'll ever see, no matter what year it is. Yeah, there's not enough good things I could say about this storyline, this match. And as sad as the ending was, it was a part of the entire story of what makes it stand out so much. So yeah, Mick Foley's retirement lasted all of 1 month, as a few weeks later he was brought in to be a part of the WrestleMania 2000 main event, along with Triple H, The Rock, and The Big Show, and all of them had a different McMahon in every one of their corners. When I tell you that was one of the most confusing builds and most ridiculous builds for a main event of WrestleMania that I've ever seen, I do not exaggerate. Like every week, it all changed. Where like 1 week it's Triple H versus Big Show, then it's Triple H versus Rock, then it's Triple H versus Rock versus Big Show. Then they add Mick Foley after he just retired. It's like, yo, what the hell are you guys putting us through? What the hell is all this nonsense? As great as the WWE product was during 2000, and as great as the pay-per-views were throughout 2000, for some reason they produced one of the worst WrestleManias ever during that year. Yeah, because this No Way Out show was great, and then Backlash the month after WrestleMania was great, but WrestleMania 2000 was not great at all. So if there's any shows from 2000 I recommend for you to watch, do not watch WrestleMania, Definitely watch this No Way Out show that I talked about today. Watch Royal Rumble, watch Backlash, Judgment Day, Fully Loaded, SummerSlam. Those shows are top tier, and this show being included on that list. So yeah, that was No Way Out 2000. Very strong show. A prime example of how WWE was firing on all cylinders during this time. And if there's anything from this show I suggest to go back and watch, it's obviously the main event with Triple H and Cactus Jack. Also the six-man tag with Rikishi and Too Cool against the Radicals. And also the tag team match with Edge and Christian and the Hardys. Though if you're going to watch anything from this show, if you don't watch the entire show, watch those three matches. But overall, just a very enjoyable show from start to finish. Yeah, great angles, great fun talent to watch, great storylines, quality matches compared to what they were doing the years before. Yeah, WWE was really on it in 2000, and this show, yeah, just not enough good things, like I said before, that I could say about it. So if you have Netflix, it's on Netflix. Check it out whenever you have time. Yeah, I highly recommend this show. Also, if you're going to be into watching No Way Outs, in addition to this one, watch No Way Out 2001, which, funny enough, the anniversary of that show is today, 25 years. As great as this No Way Out was in 2000, I will be honest, No Way Out 2001 was an even better show. So yeah, if you have some free time, if you feel like watching these old wrestling shows, I suggest going back to watch some of these shows because yeah, it'll definitely be a good use of your time. I promise. So yes, we do have Elimination Chamber this coming Saturday taking place from Chicago. Enjoy it. I'll be here talking about it afterwards. I'll definitely be doing reviews, the good, the bad, the ugly. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our Instagram page, follow us, like and subscribe. Let us know what you think about the product we're putting out for you guys. We'd love to debate with you guys about it in a healthy way, keyword healthy way. And until next time, this is Konscious Kurt with another edition of Clash of Champions. Take care. Enjoy your weekend. Have fun, but don't make some stupid decisions. And remember, most of all, don't be an asshole in real life or social media because that toxic bullshit is for the birds. Have a good one, guys. Take care.